When you look specifically at the text of the Constitution, what evidence do you see of the founders' support for an idea of a loyal opposition?
You see the debate clause in Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1, which allows for debate in the Senate, and that shows that they were looking for all sides of an issue to be brought up and for deliberation to occur.
What relationship is there among the concepts of limited government, checks and balances, and loyal opposition?
Limited government and checks and balances go together because the checks and balances that each branch has on each other limits the power that each branch can have, so that not one branch becomes more powerful and almost totalitarian. And
I think it's important to understand that I think loyal opposition can be its own check against the different branches of government. I would say that in the Supreme Court, the opinions of the courts really serve to show the opinions of how the court feels about how the other two branches are acting. And even how the people respond to the three branches of government shows how their opposition can be heard.
Amplify on that, it's an interesting concept. You've talked about loyal opposition. I think most people think about loyal opposition in partisan terms, if we're pulling on the British concept. But you've suggested it's something broader than that, given the Supreme Court example. So talk a little bit more about the Tea Party that you mentioned, and how does the Tea Party fit in, or in some of the states where they're militias. Are those part of the loyal opposition?
I think the Tea Parties are an extremely interesting issue for us. I think our panel would disagree on whether it is actually loyal opposition or obstruction. I think it's really exciting to watch this happen. I think one of the main arguments that the Tea Party has is that with this new health care bill that is coming out, the state's 10th Amendment, guarantee to have powers not expressly given to the national government is being violated. So this brings them to, draw attention to the issue that they think is being violated.
Another part of the Constitution that I feel is being violated with the healthcare debate is the supremacy clause in Article 6, Section 2 of the Constitution, because it goes against the ideas of federalism and giving the states the power to decide what they want.
Okay, but given the fact that you're referring to the 10th Amendment or the supremacy clause, doesn't that suggest that it is part of the loyal opposition, that they are referring to something that's part of the fundamental document in the Constitution? So for those of the panel who would not include that, doesn't that suggest they really are? They're not suggesting we reject the Constitution, let's refer to the Constitution to suggest why we shouldn't be doing this.
Personally, I agree that the Tea Parties are an example of loyal opposition because they believe that the principles that they are acting on are part of the government, and it's not going against the principles of government, which is how we define obstruction to be. And also, they aren't really given an outlet to become obstructionists because they are not in the legislature halting any sort of laws that are going to be passed. They are simply people speaking their minds.
I think it can be seen as loyal opposition because I see loyal opposition and obstructionism as an opinion, such as judicial activism, where one man's loyal opposition is another obstructionism. So the people doing the Tea Parties think that they are being loyal opposition, but others who don't agree with it could see them as obstructing society.
To play the devil's advocate, a CBS News poll found that only 2% of the people who support the Tea Party movement knew that President Obama had supported legislation to lower taxes, and 30% of the people who supported the Tea Party movement believed that President Obama should not be president because they believed he was born in another country. While I believe that there are many people within the Tea Party who have legitimate concerns about the healthcare, I also think that a lot of people who associate themselves with this movement do not even know what exactly they are opposing. So can it truly be loyal opposition if they are unaware of exactly what they are opposing?
In your opening presentation, you referred to failure to act on presidential appointments as one aspect of this issue. If each of you were senators, what criteria would you use to decide when it was appropriate to block a presidential appointment to a position of government and when the good of the whole society required that that person get an up or down vote regardless of whether you think that's the right person for the job?
I would say that the senators need to look at the good of the people, because they need to look at the background that the person being appointed has to see what credibility they have and their ability to potentially help aid the president or Supreme Court or whatever the case may be.
Yes, I think that the good of the people is also important. While people in the Senate may not always be of the same political affiliation of those who are of the presidential appointments, I turn to look at the current situation with the Obama administration, where there are over 200 presidential appointments who are waiting to be approved by the Senate. And this is where the recess appointment comes in, and President Obama, feels obligated to use this, which I think is unfortunate.
I'd just like to add that the power of the recess appointment is found in Article 2, Section 2, Clause 3 of the Constitution.
Let's go back to a definition of the Federalist Papers. How did Madison define a faction? Does anyone recall?
In Federalist 10, Madison discusses factions and how they're necessary for the success of democracy and how they would play off in each other. And factions are just the group of people that have varying opinions, whether they're greatly varying or slightly varying, but they are groups that keep each other in check. And like a quote from Federalist 10 says, "Extend the sphere and you take in a greater variety of parties and interests." So with every faction, you take a little bit more from the people and you see what we can accomplish together.